Imagine this. You've got a machine, a powerful one, that makes life easier for you and your neighbors. You use it responsibly, always within reason. It's not flashy or troublesome. It's just necessary. Now, picture being told you can't use it anymore. That's exactly what happened to me, and the reason? Well, the Homeowners Association, or HOA, decided it didn't fit their vision of what our neighborhood should look like. My trusty tractor, the very thing that kept the snow out of driveways and allowed people to get out in winter, was deemed an eyesore. I thought it was a joke at first. How could they possibly ban something so essential? But no, the rules were set and I had to comply, no exceptions. I didn't argue. I simply moved it out, even though I knew this wouldn't end well for them. Fast forward to winter. A storm of the century was on its way, and with it, a blizzard so fierce it could shut down an entire town. The HOA's tiny snowplow service? It was no match for what was coming. But I knew something they didn't. When that snow hit, I'd be the one everyone turned to, and they would beg for my tractor. And let me tell you, when they knocked on my door, desperate for help, I couldn't help but smile. Curious to know what happened next? I had been living in my neighborhood for over a decade, a place where suburban convenience met a touch of rural charm. It was supposed to be the perfect spot, spacious lots, a close-knit community, and a peaceful vibe. My neighbors were friendly, and everyone took care of their properties. We all enjoyed the benefits of country living without the drawbacks of being too far from town. But of course there was a catch. The Homeowners Association, or HOA, was supposed to keep the neighborhood looking neat. At least, that was the idea. Over time, though, it became something else entirely. A power-hungry group of people who had nothing better to do than poke their noses into everyone else's business. At the head of it all was Karen, the HOA president. She loved rules, but only if they suited her perfect vision of how the neighborhood should look. Karen was surrounded by a group of loyal followers. Todd, the vice president, who was little more than her puppet, and Debbie, who seemed to agree with everything Karen said without question. These three were the heart of the HOA, and their obsession with control was becoming unbearable. One day, I got a letter from the HOA saying that my tractor, something I had used for years to clear my driveway and help out my neighbors, was no longer allowed. The letter stated, "No heavy machinery allowed." It made no sense. My tractor had never caused any issues, but they didn't care about that. They cared about one thing, their power. I was stunned at first, but disbelief quickly turned to frustration. I had to do something about this. I couldn't just let it slide. I decided to take the matter head on. The next HOA meeting was my chance to make things right. It was held at the neighborhood clubhouse, a place that was supposed to bring the community together. Instead, it felt more like a courtroom, where Karen and her followers judged everyone. I walked in, feeling a mix of frustration and determination. I took a seat in the back, arms crossed, ready to speak when my turn came. Karen stood at the front, wearing her usual blazer and a fake smile, looking like she was enjoying every second of her power trip. Todd sat beside her, nodding along like he was too afraid to have an opinion of his own. Karen called the meeting to order with that same fake cheerfulness, her eyes scanning the room like she was about to scold a group of misbehaving children. When my turn arrived, I stood up, walked to the front, and kept it simple. I told them that my tractor was not a problem. It wasn't a hazard, and more importantly, it was essential for clearing snow during the winter. Without it, both my driveway and several of my neighbors' driveways would remain buried, making it impossible to leave during a snowstorm. Karen didn't even flinch. She flashed that condescending smile, the one that made my blood boil. "I understand your concerns," she said, the words dripping with fake sympathy. "But the board has decided that heavy machinery doesn't align with the aesthetic of our neighborhood." Aesthetic? I couldn't believe it. I pointed out that the snowplow service they hired wasn't nearly enough to handle the storm we'd get every winter. I told them about the elderly couple who relied on me to clear their driveway, and the single mom who wouldn't be able to get her car out. But Karen wasn't interested in practicality. Todd jumped in, his voice dull and lifeless. "The rule is the rule. If we make exceptions for you, we'll have to make exceptions for everyone." With that, the decision was made. My tractor was banned. They voted, and the result was clear. 30 days to remove it or face a fine. It wasn't over. I wasn't giving up yet. But at that moment, I knew the battle was just beginning. The first snowfall of the season wasn't much to worry about. A light dusting covered the roads, nothing unusual for the area. The HOA seemed pleased with themselves, convinced that their plow service would take care of any snow problems. They'd been bragging about it for weeks, acting like they had everything under control. Karen even sent out an email, reminding everyone that there was no need for personal snow removal equipment. "Don't worry," she wrote. "Our plows will handle it all. Just be patient." The message was clearly meant to reassure everyone, but it did the opposite. People started talking. Some were skeptical, others just plain worried. The plow service wasn't exactly known for being timely, and we all knew that a heavy storm could turn everything into a nightmare. A few days later, the weather reports started changing. The mild winter conditions were about to shift. Meteorologists warned us of something serious. A historic blizzard was heading our way. Snowfall wasn't just going to be a few inches, but rather several feet, with high winds and dangerously low temperatures. The kind of storm that could leave people stranded and cause widespread damage. But Karen and her crew didn't seem fazed. They stayed firm in their belief that the plows could handle anything. It was almost like they were living in denial. They even sent another email out to the neighborhood, repeating their earlier message. "The snowplows are on standby, and everything will be taken care of. Please remain calm." The more I thought about it, the more I realized how out of touch they were. They had no idea what was coming. I'd seen this type of storm before, and it would leave their plows in the dust. Then the storm hit. It wasn't just a few inches of snow. It came down fast and heavy, covering everything in sight. The wind howled, making it nearly impossible to see. I couldn't help but watch, knowing full well the chaos that was about to unfold. The storm didn't let up. It came down harder and faster than anyone had expected. Within hours, the streets were completely buried under several feet of snow. Everything was covered: cars, mailboxes, even the taller fences. The wind howled like it was angry at the world, pushing snow into massive drifts that swallowed entire driveways. The neighborhood was paralyzed. As the night fell, the situation only got worse. The power went out, plunging everyone into darkness. It wasn't just inconvenient, it was dangerous. The houses that still had heat started to feel like iceboxes, and the temperature dropped fast. People were stuck in their homes, unable to get out. No one had prepared for this kind of disaster. The snowplows the HOA had promised? They were nowhere to be seen. By morning, the chaos was in full swing. Neighbors were sending messages in the group chat, desperate for help. Some couldn't even open their doors because the snow was piled up so high. Others had lost power entirely, and their homes were freezing. There was no sign of the plow service. The HOA had promised they'd come through, but clearly, they were too overwhelmed to do anything. The group chat was full of panic. Karen tried to keep the peace, sending a message: "Remain calm. The plows are on their way." But people weren't calm. They were stuck. One neighbor messaged, "I can't even open my door. My driveway is completely blocked." Another neighbor's message read, "My heater's out and we're freezing. What are we supposed to do?" Meanwhile, I sat in my warm house, sipping coffee. It was hard not to feel a little smug. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. The ones who had banned my tractor were now realizing just how unprepared they were. The storm had taken everything from the HOA's control. Their plows were useless, their promises empty. And now they needed help, my help. The first knock on my door came just as I was settling in, sipping my coffee. I opened it to find Todd standing there, bundled up like a snowman, his face red from the cold. He shuffled his feet nervously, clearly not used to coming to me for anything. We need your help," he muttered, avoiding eye contact. I raised an eyebrow. "Help? You mean the same help that was banned by your HOA?" Todd shifted uncomfortably, his breath visible in the freezing air. "Look, the roads, they're completely blocked. Karen's house is buried, the plows aren't coming, and people can't get out. We need your tractor." I couldn't help but smile at the irony. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. These were the same people who had kicked me out, claiming my tractor was a nuisance. Now they were standing at my door, desperate for it. "I'd love to help," I said slowly, savoring every word. "But you see, my tractor isn't here anymore. It's been moved because of the HOA rules." I let that sink in for a moment before adding, "Good luck with that snowstorm." With that, I closed the door on him, making sure to enjoy the moment. Todd stood there for a few seconds, probably hoping I'd crack and offer to help, but I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction. He trudged back through the snow, slipping twice before disappearing around the corner. But that wasn't the end of it. The knocks kept coming. More emails flooded my inbox, all filled with desperate pleas for help. The HOA was in full panic mode now, but I wasn't about to make it easy for them. Then the phone rang. I glanced at the screen, and there it was, Karen. I answered on the second ring, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "Hello." "Look," Karen said, her voice tense. "The plows aren't coming. We need your tractor to clear the roads. Just get over here." I couldn't resist. "Oh, you want my tractor now?" "The same tractor you banned." There was a long pause on the other end, then she sighed. "Fine. You win. Just come and clear the damn roads." That was it. The storm was still raging outside, but I wasn't going to rush to their rescue just yet. When Karen called back, I already knew I had her right where I wanted her. I could hear the frustration in her voice, but I wasn't about to let her off the hook that easily. She begged me to come help, but it wasn't just about clearing snow anymore. I had conditions, serious ones. "I'll help," I said casually, leaning back in my chair, "but there are a few things we need to settle first." There was a brief silence on the other end. I could tell she was holding her breath, probably thinking I was going to make some ridiculous demand. Well, in a way, I was. I wasn't going to just clear the roads and let her get away with all the nonsense she had put me through. "First," I continued, "I want the tractor ban lifted. In writing. Officially. No more silly rules about heavy machinery." I heard her exhale sharply. "Are you serious?" she asked, her voice rising. "You're making this a condition?" "Oh, I'm very serious," I replied. "No ban. Not unless you want to keep dealing with the mess you created." There was another pause. I could hear her grinding her teeth, but she knew I wasn't going to budge. I wasn't finished yet. "Second," I said, enjoying this far too much, "I want a public apology at the next HOA meeting. You and the board need to admit you were wrong." I could practically hear her eyes rolling. "You're joking, right?" "Nope," I said. "I'm not." And then I added the final condition, just to really drive the point home. "And lastly, I want all my fines refunded. Every single dollar." Karen was silent. I could almost hear the gears turning in her head as she realized that she had no other choice. She could try to fight it, but she knew how this was going to end. She was trapped. Finally, she spoke again, her voice tight with barely contained rage. "Fine," she spat. "You've made your point. I'll do it." That was the moment I knew I had won. She was defeated, and the best part was she knew it. The next morning, I got an email from the HOA board. It was short, straight to the point. "Effective immediately, the restriction on personal heavy machinery for snow removal is lifted. We recognize the importance of community support during extreme weather conditions and appreciate everyone's cooperation." It was done. The rule was gone. And, just like that, I was back in business. I wasn't done yet, though. The real sweet revenge was still to come. The HOA sent out the email to the entire neighborhood, officially reversing the rule. It was like a wave of relief washed over the community. People had been complaining about the tractor ban for months, and now it was finally over. I could almost hear the cheers from my neighbors, even though I wasn't standing in the middle of the street. The whole community knew the truth now. The HOA had been wrong, and I had won. Karen and her cronies had lost, and they didn't even know it yet. The moment I saw the email from the HOA, I knew it was time. The tractor ban was lifted, and I was finally free to do what I had been forced to give up. I headed out to my friend's barn where I had kept my tractor. The drive was slow, the roads still covered in thick snow, but I couldn't help the grin that stretched across my face. When I pulled up to the neighborhood, something amazing happened. People actually started to gather around. They watched as I rolled in with my tractor, the machine that had been banned not long ago, the one that had been deemed an eyesore by the HOA. I revved the engine, making a big show of it, just so everyone could hear. This wasn't just clearing snow, it was about making a statement. I got to work, plowing through the snowdrifts, one driveway at a time. Neighbors waved at me, some even cheered. It felt like I was finally getting the respect I deserved. I worked methodically, clearing the roads, opening up pathways, and making sure everyone could get in and out. It felt good. But there was one house I hadn't touched yet. Karen's house. I made sure to clear every other driveway, just making sure she saw me. Her house was buried under snow, her driveway completely blocked, but I wasn't in any hurry to help her. I could see her through the window, standing there, arms crossed, watching me. Her face looked like she wanted to explode, and I couldn't help but enjoy it. The longer I took, the more I could tell her frustration was building. After a while, one of the neighbors came up to me. "You're not going to skip hers, are you?" he asked, glancing over at Karen's house. I gave him a sly grin. "Not yet. Finally, after making her wait, I pulled my tractor up to her driveway. I got out, stretched, and turned to face her. She stepped out, her face tight with forced politeness. "Thank you for clearing the driveways," she said, her voice cold. "I really appreciate it." I smiled, leaning on the tractor. "I'll clear your driveway, but only if you admit you were wrong. Right here. Right now." She hesitated, her face turning a shade of red I hadn't seen before. She looked around, no doubt hoping someone would come to her defense, but no one did. Finally, she muttered, "Fine. You were right. The tractor ban was a mistake." I nodded, satisfied. It had taken a while, but it was worth it. With that, I cleared her driveway. Not only had I helped the entire neighborhood, but I had gotten the apology I deserved. The sweet victory was finally mine. It didn't take long for the ripple effects of Karen's downfall to spread throughout the neighborhood. The truth was out. The community had seen what kind of leader she really was, someone who used power to control and punish, rather than to help. The atmosphere began to shift. People who had kept their heads down, afraid to speak up, started to voice their frustrations. They were tired of living under Karen's thumb. A petition started circulating, calling for Karen's removal as HOA president. The more people signed, the more it felt like the entire neighborhood was finally waking up. Those who had supported her before were now joining the movement. People were done with her rules, her fines, and her micromanagement. It was no longer just about the tractor ban. It was about the entire culture she had created in the neighborhood. When the vote came, it wasn't even close. 81% of the neighborhood voted to remove Karen from power. The moment the results were announced, Karen's face turned pale. She stood there, stunned, like she couldn't believe what had just happened. For years, she had held the reins of the HOA, making decisions based on what suited her idea of the perfect neighborhood. But now, it was clear that the people had had enough. As Karen tried to process the loss, she muttered under her breath, "You all turned against me because of him." She pointed directly at me. Her last attempt to save face, but it didn't work. I looked at her, arms folded, feeling a sense of satisfaction wash over me. "Nah, we just got sick of your nonsense," I replied, my voice calm but firm. That was the truth. With the vote behind her, Karen couldn't stay in the neighborhood any longer. It was no longer her kingdom to rule. She put her house up for sale just weeks after the vote. The neighbors who had once been afraid of crossing her were now talking openly about how good it felt to have their voices heard. As Karen packed up, she couldn't leave without one final act of defiance. She stomped out of her house, clearly angry, but there was nothing left for her here. The community had spoken, and her reign was over. She moved out quietly, and the neighborhood began to breathe again. No more rules that made no sense, no more fines for things that didn't matter. The neighborhood quickly settled into a new rhythm. With Karen gone, the HOA was finally in capable hands. The new leadership didn't waste time fixing the mess she had created. The rules were reasonable now. Nothing about trash placement or holiday decorations. It was a breath of fresh air. No more petty fines, no more unnecessary restrictions. People started to feel like they could actually enjoy their homes again. The best part came shortly after. Karen, defeated and bitter, put her house up for sale. It wasn't long before new neighbors moved in. They were excited, and as they unpacked their things, something caught my eye, a bright, shiny new John Deere tractor. I couldn't help but laugh. Of all the things they could have bought, they brought in a tractor. The irony wasn't lost on me. The one thing Karen had banned was now proudly parked in the driveway of her old house. I couldn't have asked for a better ending. Then, like the final touch on a perfectly painted picture, I got a message from Karen. It was a text as expected. "Hope you're happy. You ruined everything." I didn't even hesitate. I replied simply, "Nah, I just made it better." And with that, I blocked her number. It was the final victory. Karen's reign was over, and I could finally enjoy peace in the neighborhood. No more drama, no more fear of fines. Just a better place to live. So what do you think? Have you ever had your own HOA nightmare? Or maybe you've dealt with a Karen-style neighbor who thinks they can control everything. Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your stories. And if you enjoyed watching Karen's downfall as much as I did, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. I've got plenty more stories coming your way, and trust me, you won't want to miss them. Whether it's dealing with crazy neighbors or ridiculous HOA rules, I'll keep sharing all the good stuff. So, stick around for more laughs, more drama, and more moments where the bad guys get what they deserve. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.